The day I signed my divorce papers, I felt like I was burying a part of myself alive. The courthouse was cold, silent, and smelled like old paper and broken promises. My hands trembled as I held the pen, and when the ink touched the page, it was like my heart cracked in half. I remember glancing at Daniel, my husband, or rather, the man who used to be my everything. He didn't look at me once. His eyes were fixed on the floor, as if avoiding me could erase the years we had spent together. I wanted to scream, to ask him how he could walk away so easily after 7 years of marriage, but my voice was trapped somewhere deep in my chest. The judge's monotone voice echoed, "You are now legally divorced." And just like that, my world stopped. When we walked out of that courtroom, he brushed past me without a single word, like a stranger passing by. I stood there in the hallway, surrounded by people moving on with their lives, while mine had just shattered into pieces. I went home that night to an empty apartment that still smelled like his cologne. The silence was unbearable. I opened the bathroom cabinet to grab something for my headache, and that's when I saw it. The pregnancy test I had bought days earlier, but was too afraid to take. My heart pounded as I ripped open the box. I didn't even sit down. I just stood there staring as the line appeared. 1 line, then 2. I froze. My knees went weak, and I dropped the stick onto the counter. Pregnant. I whispered the word out loud as if saying it might make it real. My tears came fast and heavy. How was I supposed to tell a man who had just divorced me that I was carrying his child? I sat on the cold bathroom floor for what felt like hours, clutching my stomach, torn between joy and devastation. I didn't know whether this was a blessing or a cruel twist of fate. All I knew was that my life had changed again in the span of a single day. First I lost a husband, and then I found out I was about to become a mother. I didn't sleep that night. I kept staring at the ceiling, my hand resting on my stomach, trying to understand what this meant. Daniel had made it clear he didn't want to be part of my life anymore. And now, fate was tying us together in the most permanent way possible. I thought about calling him, but what would I even say? "Hey, remember how we just ended our marriage? Surprise, you're going to be a dad." No, I couldn't do it. Not after how cold he'd been. He had walked out without a second thought, and I refused to give him a reason to come back out of pity. The next morning, I sat in the kitchen with my coffee untouched, staring at the divorce decree on the table. My lawyer's voice from yesterday echoed in my head. "It's final now. Final." The word felt like a blade. But then, I looked at the pregnancy test again, and for the first time in months, I felt something other than sadness. I felt purpose. Maybe this was life giving me a reason to move forward. I went to the clinic to confirm the test, and when the doctor smiled and said, "Congratulations, you're about 6 weeks along," I burst into tears. They weren't tears of pain this time. They were tears of confusion, fear, and a strange kind of hope. That night I made a decision. I wasn't going to tell Daniel. He had chosen his path, and now I had to choose mine. I would raise this child on my own, no matter how hard it got. I picked up extra shifts at work, sold some of my jewelry, and moved to a smaller apartment. Every kick, every heartbeat I heard during the ultrasounds reminded me why I had to stay strong. My friends told me I was crazy for not telling him, that he had the right to know. But they didn't understand he had already broken me once, and I wouldn't give him another chance to hurt me. When I held my baby girl in my arms for the first time, I knew I'd made the right choice. Her tiny fingers wrapped around mine, and in that moment, I realized I didn't need anyone else. She was my reason, my strength, and my second chance at life. The first few years after my daughter's birth were the hardest yet most beautiful of my life. I named her Lily because she brought light into my darkest days. Every morning I woke up to her tiny giggles, and it reminded me that love could still exist even after heartbreak. But raising her alone wasn't easy. I worked 2 jobs, one as a receptionist during the day and another cleaning offices at night. There were nights when I would come home so tired I could barely keep my eyes open. But the moment Lily reached for me, All the exhaustion faded. Still, deep down, I carried the secret like a weight on my chest. Every time someone asked about her father, I'd smile politely and say, "It's just us." Some would give me sympathetic looks, others judgmental ones, but I didn't care. What mattered was keeping her safe from the chaos I had escaped. Sometimes I'd see Daniel's name pop up in mutual friends' social media posts. He seemed happy, smiling, traveling, living a life free from any trace of me. I told myself that was good. He didn't need to know. He had chosen to leave, and I had chosen to survive. But there were nights when I'd rock Lily to sleep and stare at her face, noticing how her eyes looked just like his, the same deep brown that once made me fall in love. I'd whisper softly, "You have your daddy's eyes, baby," and then quickly wipe away my tears before they fell onto her tiny cheeks. Life slowly became a rhythm. Work, daycare, diapers, repeat. I learned to fix things around the apartment, to budget every penny, and to smile through the exhaustion. I built a new version of myself, strong, independent, and focused on giving Lily everything she deserved. My friends admired my strength, but they didn't see the nights I cried into my pillow, wondering if I had done the right thing by keeping her a secret. There was always that voice in my head asking, what if he would have wanted her? But then I'd remember his cold eyes in the courtroom, the way he didn't even glance back, and I'd silence that voice again. I promised myself that one day, when Lily was older, I'd tell her the truth, but not yet. Not until she was ready. By the time Lily turned 6, life had settled into something that almost felt normal. She had started school, made friends, and filled our small apartment with drawings and laughter. Watching her grow was like healing in slow motion, each smile, each hug, mending the cracks inside me that Daniel had left behind. I had learned to stop looking for his face in the crowd, to stop wondering what he would think if he saw her. Until one evening, fate decided to test me again. I had taken Lily to a local park after work. She was playing on the swings, her hair flying in the wind, when I heard a voice behind me, a voice I hadn't heard in 7 years. "Emily?" My whole body froze. I turned slowly, and there he was. Daniel. He looked older, more mature, but his eyes, those same brown eyes, still carried the same storm they always had. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, my throat tightening. He smiled awkwardly. "Wow, it's been a long time." I wanted to run, but my feet wouldn't move. "Yeah," I managed to say, my voice trembling. "A long time." He asked how I'd been, what I was doing, all those polite questions strangers ask, not realizing how deep the wounds go. I lied through every answer, keeping my words short, my guard high, and then his gaze drifted to Lily. She had jumped off the swing and was running toward me, her laughter echoing. Daniel's expression changed. He stared at her, confused, then curious. "She's beautiful," he said softly. My stomach tightened. "She's mine," I replied quickly. He smiled, but I could see questions forming in his eyes. Lily ran up and grabbed my hand. "Mommy, can we get ice cream?" she asked, her small voice pulling me back to reality. Daniel's eyes widened slightly at the word, "Mommy," but I didn't give him time to think. I just smiled at Lily and said, "Of course, sweetheart." Then I turned to Daniel, forced a polite smile, and said, "It was nice seeing you, Daniel. Take care." I walked away before he could say another word, my hands shaking, my heart racing. I could feel his eyes on us until we disappeared from view. And deep down, I knew this wasn't over. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, the confusion, the recognition, the way his gaze lingered on Lily. It felt like the walls of my secret were starting to crumble. I kept telling myself it was just a coincidence, that he'd move on and forget what he saw, but something deep inside whispered that it wasn't that simple. Over the next few weeks, I noticed things that made my heart race. A familiar car parked across the street when I dropped Lily off at school. A bouquet of flowers left at my doorstep with no note. A text from an unknown number saying, "Can we talk?" I ignored it, blocked the number, but fear started creeping into my chest. I didn't want Lily's world to be shaken by the past I had worked so hard to bury. One afternoon, as I waited outside the school, I saw him again. Daniel. He was standing near the gate, pretending to check his phone, but I knew he was watching. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. When Lily ran into my arms, he walked toward us slowly. "Emily, please," he said softly, his voice filled with something between desperation and guilt. "I need to know. Is Lily mine?" The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. My heart felt like it stopped beating for a second. I looked at him, then at Lily, who was humming and holding my hand, blissfully unaware of the storm between us. I wanted to lie. I wanted to say no and walk away forever. But when I opened my mouth, nothing came out. My silence was all the answer he needed. His eyes widened and tears filled them instantly. "Oh my God," he whispered. "All this time?" I turned away, my voice shaking as I said, "You don't get to do this, Daniel. You don't get to show up after 7 years and demand answers." He looked broken, his voice trembling. "I didn't know, Emily. You should have told me." I met his eyes and said, "You didn't want to know. You left before there was even a chance." And then I walked away, clutching Lily's hand tighter than ever, praying that the past wouldn't destroy the life I'd built for us. The days that followed were filled with tension and unease. I knew he wouldn't stop there. Daniel had always been stubborn, and now that he knew the truth, there was no doubt he'd want to be part of Lily's life. I tried to focus on work, on keeping our routines steady, but my mind was always racing. One evening, just as I was putting dinner on the table, there was a knock at the door. My heart skipped a beat. When I opened it, he was standing there, his eyes red, his voice low. "Please, Emily, just talk to me." I sighed, exhausted. "Daniel, you shouldn't be here." He looked past me and saw Lily sitting at the table, coloring. His breath caught in his throat. "She looks just like you," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I just want to know her." I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. "You lost that right when you walked away," I said firmly. "You didn't want a family back then, remember?" His jaw tightened. "I was young, scared. I made mistakes, but I've changed. Please don't punish me by keeping her from me." For a moment, I almost believed him. His eyes were filled with sincerity, but my heart still carried the scars of his choices. "You left me when I needed you most, Daniel," I said quietly. "I went through everything alone. Every sleepless night, every doctor visit, every fear I faced it without you." He ran a hand through his hair, his voice trembling. "If I'd known, I never would have left. Emily, please. I just want to make it right." I turned away, my throat tight. "You can't fix 7 years of silence with a single apology." He nodded slowly, tears forming in his eyes. "Then let me at least be her father now. Let me try." I didn't answer. I just stood there in the cold, torn between anger and compassion. Part of me wanted to slam the door and protect the life I had built. But another part, the one that had once loved him deeply, wondered if Lily deserved to know the man who had given her half her heart. As he walked away into the night, I realized this wasn't the end of our story. It was only the beginning of a new, painful chapter. The next morning, I woke up with a knot in my stomach. I knew Daniel wasn't going to disappear quietly, and deep down, I wasn't sure I wanted him to. For the first time in years, I found myself questioning the choices I had made. Had I really protected Lily by keeping her father away? Or had I robbed her of something she had the right to know? I watched her at breakfast, her messy curls bouncing as she laughed over a cartoon, completely unaware of the storm outside her small world. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Daniel. "Please let me see her just once. I won't upset her." I stared at the screen for a long time before replying, 1 hour. At the park. Don't make me regret it. That evening, as Lily ran toward the swings, I saw him waiting on a nearby bench. He stood up nervous, his hands shaking slightly. "Hey," he said softly when I approached. "Hey," I replied, my voice guarded. He looked at Lily with a kind of awe that made my chest tighten. She noticed him watching and smiled shyly. "Mommy, who's that?" she asked. I swallowed hard. "Just an old friend, sweetheart." Lily ran off to the slide, and Daniel's eyes followed her every move, his lips trembling. "She's perfect," he whispered. I nodded, unable to speak. For the next hour, he didn't try to push boundaries. He just watched her play, laughed softly when she giggled, and asked quiet questions about her favorite food, her hobbies, her dreams. There was something genuine in his eyes that I hadn't seen before. Something softer, more mature. When it was time to leave, Lily waved at him and said, "Bye, mister." He smiled through tears and whispered, "Bye, sweetheart." On the way home, Lily asked, "Mommy, why was that man so nice?" My throat tightened. "Because some people just are," I said, forcing a smile. But inside my heart was trembling. Seeing him with her had stirred something I thought was long buried, a mixture of pain, nostalgia, and an ache I couldn't define. That night I lay awake thinking about the past and the future, wondering if forgiveness was possible, or if some wounds were too deep to ever truly heal. The days after that meeting felt strange, like living in two worlds at once, the one I had built with just Lily and me, and the one that Daniel suddenly wanted to be part of. He started texting me more often, asking how Lily was doing, sending little gifts for her birthday and school events. At first, I kept everything distant. I told him he could see her occasionally, always in public places, never alone. But as weeks turned into months, I couldn't ignore what I was seeing. He showed up, every single time. No excuses, no last-minute cancellations. He was patient, gentle, and respectful of every boundary I set. Lily grew to like him, though she still didn't know who he truly was. "Mommy, that nice man from the park is funny," she'd say with a grin after every visit. And each time my heart ached a little more. I saw how her laughter came easier around him, how her eyes sparkled in a way that made her look even more like him. One afternoon, while we were sitting at a cafe after Lily's ballet class, Daniel looked at me and said quietly, "She deserves to know, Emily." My chest tightened. "She's just a child," I whispered. "She won't understand the mess we made." He shook his head. "You're underestimating her. Kids understand love better than adults do." I wanted to argue, but his words lingered. That night, I watched Lily sleep, her little hand clutching her stuffed bear, and for the first time, I imagined what it would be like if she knew the truth, if she called him Dad. I didn't sleep much. My mind kept replaying all the years of silence, all the birthdays and milestones he had missed. Could I forgive that? Could I let him into her life without reopening my own wounds? The next morning, I found myself standing by the window, watching the sunrise, and I realized something important. I wasn't doing this for him. I was doing it for her, for the little girl who deserved every piece of love she could get, even from the man who had once broken mine. And so, with trembling hands, I decided that it was time to tell Lily who he really was. The day I decided to tell Lily the truth felt heavier than any moment I had faced before. My hands were cold as I held her little ones in mine, sitting together on the couch where we had shared countless stories and laughs. But this one would be different. "Sweetheart," I began softly, "remember the man you met at the park? The one who brings you chocolate bars and watches your ballet shows?" She smiled brightly and nodded. "Of course. He's really nice, Mommy." My throat tightened, my heart thudding against my ribs. "There's something important I need to tell you about him," I whispered. Her eyes grew curious, wide, waiting for me to continue. "That man, Daniel, he's your father." For a few seconds, The world seemed to freeze. Her smile faded slightly as she tilted her head. "My father?" she repeated, the word sounding strange coming from her lips. I nodded, tears already burning my eyes. "Yes, baby, he didn't know about you before, but now he does, and he really wants to be part of your life." She was quiet for a moment, processing the truth. Then softly she asked, "Did he not want me before?" The question pierced my soul. I pulled her close, hugging her tightly. "No, my love, he just didn't know. It wasn't your fault. It was never about you." She rested her head on my chest and whispered, "Does he love me?" My voice broke as I answered, "Yes, Lily, he does. Very much." When she finally fell asleep that night, I sat beside her, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I had done the right thing. The next day, we met Daniel at the park again. When Lily saw him, she ran toward him, her little arms open wide. "Hi, Daddy," she shouted. He froze, his eyes widening as tears streamed down his face. He dropped to his knees and hugged her as if he was holding the world in his arms. I stood a few steps away, watching through my own tears. For the first time in years, I saw no anger in him, only love, regret, and gratitude. In that moment, the years of pain seemed to fade, replaced by something new, something fragile but real: forgiveness. 7 years after signing those divorce papers, standing there in that same park watching Daniel and Lily laugh together, felt like witnessing a full circle moment that I never believed would happen. Time had changed all of us, hardened yet softer somehow. Daniel, broken but rebuilding, and Lily, the bright little soul who unknowingly healed 2 wounded hearts. I watched them chase each other across the grass, her laughter ringing through the air, his eyes full of pride and wonder. For years I had carried so much anger, so much hurt, believing that letting him go was the only way to survive. But now, seeing them together, I understood something deeper. Sometimes life separates people not to punish them, but to make them grow. Later that evening, when we were walking home, Daniel caught up with us. "Emily," he said quietly, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I know I can't undo the past, but I want to thank you. For her, for raising her so beautifully, for being stronger than I ever was." I looked at him, the man who once shattered me, and for the first time, I didn't feel bitterness, just peace. "We both made mistakes," I said softly, "but maybe this was how it was meant to happen." He nodded, his eyes glistening. "Do you think you'll ever forgive me?" I smiled faintly. "I already did, a long time ago. I just didn't realize it until now." The sunset behind him painted the sky in orange and gold, and in that light, I saw not the man who left me, but the man who finally came back. Not for me, but for his daughter. Over time, our lives found a new rhythm. Daniel became a steady presence in Lily's world-attending school plays, birthdays, and quiet Sunday picnics. We weren't a couple anymore, but we were something just as meaningful: a family built from pain, forgiveness, and growth. Sometimes, late at night, I think back to the day I signed those papers, the tears, the emptiness, the test that changed everything. If I could speak to that version of myself now, I'd tell her this: don't lose hope. What feels like the end is often the beginning of something unexpected, something beautiful. Because that day I lost a husband, I unknowingly gained a miracle.